guess I do the computer audio. And I think I must control it with the audio from the TV. That's what I'm thinking. So. Okay. I don't need to
Resume record. Yep.
Yep, there it goes.
Awesome. Oh, that's really low. I didn't realize that. Maybe I'll just go this way. There we go. That's a little bit better. Okay. All righty. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Last Women in Music event. The Women's in Music program's main purpose is to empower young women to be involved in the music world and provide support in a male-dominated profession. Through these events, we hope to broaden a young woman's knowledge of women in the music industry. Tonight, we'll hear from the director of the St. Louis Symphony Choir, Amy Kaiser. Since 1995, Amy Kaiser has been one of the country's leading choral directors. She has conducted the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra and several famous works and the Young People's Concerts. She has been a guest conductor for the Berkshire Choral Festival in Massachusetts, Santa Fe, and at Canterbury Cathedral, and music director of the Dezoff Choirs in New York for 12 seasons. And she has also led many performances of major works at Lincoln Center. Her other conducting engagements include Chicago's Grant Park Music Festivals, Peter Scheichel's PDQ back and with the New Jersey Symphony, and more than 50 performances with the Metropolitan Opera Guild. She's also been the principal conductor of the New York Chamber Symphony School Concert Series for 7 seasons. Not only has she had an outstanding career as a conductor, but Amy has also been an inspiration and teacher to many in the field of conducting. She has not only managed to conduct many beautiful pieces, but she has created new experiences for singers and audiences. Amy has been an inspiration to many in the music world. The lack of inclusions and underrepresentation that Amy faced is why I'm trying to create this program in hopes to help young women find their voice and find role models such as Amy Kaiser. Before we begin, a few reminders. Please keep your mask on in the proper fashion if you are here. Please also silence your cell phones, as we would like to have the least amount of interruptions as possible. Also, at the end of the speech, there will be time for Q&A. We might have some Q&A during as well, so feel free to ask questions. And we want you to be as involved as possible. Also, when the event is over, please fill out the survey that is on the website and the brochure, or that you got the Zoom from. This survey will help us know how you felt about this event and help with the finalization of these events. Lastly, I want to thank you all so much for coming, and both in person and later on as a recording. I cannot put into the words how grateful I am. Now it is my pleasure to welcome Amy Kaiser.
Thank you so much, Mackenzie. Thank you for that introduction. And it's a pleasure to be here. I am astonished that since I started conducting back in 1971, we can still talk about there being inequality, lack of opportunity, exclusion, and so on in this field. But it is greatly changed for women as conductors of all kinds. And that's been mostly, I think, the last 20 years. So that now the St. Louis Symphony has its third female associate conductor, Stephanie Childress, who at age 22 is already well established as a beginning conductor internationally. Natalie Stutzman is now the music director of the Atlanta Symphony, newly announced. Maren Alsop for years has been the music director of the Baltimore Symphony. Gemma New was the St. Louis Symphony's associate conductor. So it's become certainly not commonplace, but definitely a different world for women starting out now. And I think one can hope at age 16, 17, 18, that one could have a career as a conductor in this country or internationally. So that was never true when I was growing up. When I was in high school, I played the piano. I always loved music. Most of all, I loved singing. I discovered singing at age 3. My mother had recordings of Marian Anderson singing spirituals and Schubert songs, and I fell in love with that voice. I remember it vividly. And so voice was always it for me. I played piano as a kid and had some wonderful teachers. So I got to become pretty good at reading music, and I discovered I wanted to play folk music and sing all the parts, and fell in love with the original production of My Fair Lady back when I was 11, 1956. And Julie Andrews was the star. She was only 21. And she became my idol as a singer, that gorgeous voice. So there was always something about a special voice that appealed to me and made me want to listen to more. Broadway musicals kind of led to Gilbert and Sullivan, and then opera. And somebody gave me a recording at, I was 13. They gave me a recording of Don Giovanni, and I loved that and started playing. It had a score with it, that piano vocal score. And I started playing through the piano vocal score, and I decided I would sing all the parts. Well, that was in Italian, so then I had to learn Italian. And I did that in my high school years with an Italian grammar book, a chapter a at the breakfast table. I can't believe it, but it was exciting and fun. And I got to know all the operas, and I'd come home from school at the piano and play through The Marriage of Figaro, sing all the parts in Italian, then translate it, make sure I knew what I was saying. And the first opera that I at the Metropolitan Opera, because I and it was easy, the subway into Manhattan and go to the Met. And at age 15, you could do that perfectly safely on your own. So I started going to matinees every single Saturday, the year I was actually 14, I believe. And I heard all the great singers that were singing there at the time. Leonard Warren, just before he died, Richard Tucker, Victoria de Los Angeles, Zinka Milanov, Renata Tebaldi. I never heard Callas live because you couldn't get a ticket, but I would get a standing room ticket for $1.50. And I was one of a handful of music-loving New York kids who was doing this. And there were a bunch of us. Most of us became professional musicians after all that. It was a memorable time. And yes, it made me an outlier in high school. No question about that. But what an incredible adventure. But still, I never thought being a musician for life. That was crazy. My parents, that's how you got a good pension. There was job security in the New York City public school. So that's kind of what my mindset was. One piece of, I was not involved in music at school ever. It was always private. My school had a chorus and they did some nice things. But it was a very academic school, and I thought maybe I'd be a French teacher or something like that. I was studying languages and enjoyed that also. So when came time to go to college, I chose a place. I wasn't thinking of music at all. Chose college, Hampton, Massachusetts, because I love the campus. Lots of beautiful trips. It was from New York. And they had good language classes and good English and history, liberal arts school. I thought this is great. And I went, and freshman year, I didn't take any music. I sang in the choir. And unbeknownst to me, Smith had an amazing choral program, and they had a very, very inspiring choral director, a woman named Iva D. Hyatt. And she was a pioneer. She was a remarkably talented and ambitious person who managed to get this job as the director of choral music at a women's college. But she would never have been hired at a co-ed school, and she would never have had a professional career. That just was not possible in 1962. But then again, in 1962, the New York Philharmonic had one woman in the orchestra, and it was the harpist. So, things have changed so much, not just for conductors, but for orchestral musicians. And it's been a bottom to top kind of transformation in my lifetime. And I never knew I would see that. So I got involved in choral music only in college. And fortunately, really, it was a huge surprise that this was a whole world and wonderful. I went to Tanglewood one summer. They had a choral program. We sang with the Boston Symphony. I was 17. Fortunately did not have a summer job. That was very helpful because I was able to take the summers and learn more about music. I went to Harvard Summer School one year where there was a great choral program in that summer. And I studied with this mentor, Iva D. Hyatt, who really was a great teacher and gave her students wonderful opportunities. So I became the assistant conductor of the college glee club in my senior year, and I was leading rehearsals every Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock. And of course, that's because she didn't want to be there at 8 o'clock. And so I was able to do that. But what an amazing opportunity. I was totally on my own at age 19. I had a job one year in college when she was on sabbatical. And I conducted choir at the local private school, the Mary A. Burnham School. It was a school for girls in Northampton, Massachusetts, and they had a good glee club. I was their conductor, and everybody thought I was a student. So by the time I graduated, I was 20 years old, and I I had the training to be a professional choral conductor. But where, what? There were no real opportunities. I did musicology, spent a year in England as a floor in musicology at Oxford University, and I was studying the choir boy training there at Oxford, which was quite interesting. But then back in New York, I got a master's in musicology at Columbia University and singing. And that was one of the very best things that I could have done. I had also studied singing. I'm a singer of a nobody really wanted with high notes. So the combination though, of singing, the conducting background, piano, and musicology really turned out to be a great preparation. I didn't know it at the time, but then there were no job opportunities. And what was I going to do after this master's degree program in New York? I taught nursery school, kindergarten, music, and phys ed at the United Nations International School in New York for a year. And didn't know what, I didn't enjoy that particularly. I had no idea what I was going to do. And then I got a phone call from Smith College that they were looking for an assistant in the music and a second chorus director to conduct the freshman and sophomore choirs. And I went back there, and that was my first job. And that was an amazing piece of luck. But the problem is always you can be as prepared as you like, but unless there's opportunity, there's nothing you can do. So that was getting that first opportunity, conducting job is the first hurdle. And that was 1971. So last year, I was celebrating 50 years. That was going to be my retirement. But now I've one last year, which is a wonderful thing. I look back on 50. This is 50 years of scores. And there's a whole other shelf of choral music and filed in containers and choral music in all the desk drawers and so on. A lifetime, some of which is going to Webster University when I decide to let go. But it's a passion and one wonderful career for all this time, always with more students. So the start at Smith College, I was conducting 2 freshman choirs and a sophomore choir. These were all girls. There were 80 girls in each group. It was a big thing at Smith. And we would team up with the Dartmouth or Williams that were all men's schools at the time. They were not yet co-ed. So we would have these joint weekends, which were social, and we'd get together and we'd do one on the Smith campus and say one on the Harvard campus. And there would, or the MIT was a regular collaborator. And it was a great activity. I got to conduct the performances that were on the Smith campus, and the conductor did the other one. We did some really ambitious things. The sophomore choir sang Stravinsky's Les Noces. We didn't do it in Russian, we did it in English. We had 4 pianists from the Smith faculty, percussionists from the University of Massachusetts. The joke was that the guys from MIT could count, but of course the Smith women count well. And we put a lot of work into that, and that thing, we got a hit of 1,500 people to concert. So this was a really great starting point. I continued studying Asp Music Festival for 4 summers. That was where I worked with another wonderful mentor, John Nelson, great choral director and orchestral conductor. And I learned much more refined conducting technique so that I could work with orchestras. If you're a choral conductor, that's definitely something one has to know. My instrument was voice, so I really made a lot of efforts to learn about working with orchestras, being clear. And Aspen was a great training ground. And then I moved back to New York because I got a job at the State University of New York at Stony Brook. And they had a big master's degree program in music. They offered a master's degree in choral conducting. So I was age 26, 27, and I was director of this master program in choral conducting at University of Brook. And that was a very challenging thing. I was their 4th choral director in 4 years. And the program was a bit of a mess. I had succeeded. This was now my 2nd time succeeding man in the job. And conductor, this is something that comes out. So both at Smith and at Stony Brook, predecessor was a wonderfully talented and lovely young man, and all the students were in love with him. And so I started what I called, well, it was just succeeding beloved men. And it was clear I was going to be hated for quite a while. And things that I learned was how to survive being hated in a job as a conductor ensemble. And in a school, and rather simple, because you survive being hated. It takes 4 years, basically, until the population turns over completely, because the people who start when you start, they don't know your predecessor, and they're much more likely to continue and enjoy working with you. And in 4 years, you'll win over some of the people from the previous administration, but some you won't. And it really is thing. It's going to be a chat in my way. So Stony Brook, I was there for 4 years and got to do some wonderful repertoire. They had a lot of great student musicians, and the choruses could combine, and we could do major works for chorus and orchestra. And there was a whole voice faculty, so there were singers there. It was an excellent place, and it was near New York City, 2-hour commute. So the big surprise that I had at Stony Brook was that I came up for tenure, and I didn't get tenure, partly because of some of these students that hated me. And that was quite a shocking thing, because you know, I had done a lot of interesting music and a lot of success there, but it just didn't work. And it turned out, of course, to be one of the things that had ever happened to me. I had this light bulb go off, which was the big bad professional world can't possibly ever be as bad as this, in terms of politics and nastiness and infighting and so on. All the people who had hired me at Stony Brook, one of them died, was abroad in Europe on a sabbatical. One of them became a colleague. And anyway, those are the kinds of things that happen. And I really remember this light bulb, the big bad professional world can't be ever worse than this. And in 50 years, it never has been. But what changed that enabled me to move then after this out of academia and into the professional world? And that thing that changed was the women's movement in the early 70s. But when I was at Stony Brook, I actually saw for the first time a woman conduct an orchestra at Carnegie Hall. And this was Eve Queller. She had founded the Opera Orchestra of New York. She had been a coach at New York City Opera, but could never conduct there. So she started her own concert opera company, and they did the performances at Carnegie Hall. I went to one of them, and I remember back on the Long Island Railroad to Stony Brook and being so thrilled by this experience of seeing a woman leading this huge stage full of professional players and international singers at Carnegie. That really is such a powerful to have those role models. And she was one of the very, very first years ago. And that's one of the things that gave me the courage to move to Manhattan. I had since I grew up in New York, I had many friends there, and I had a friend who was dating the director of the chorus at Mannes College of Music. He's about to leave to get a job at Juilliard. And so he had gotten to know my work, and he said, oh, you'd be a great candidate for this job at Mannes. And I auditioned, they hired me. And so that was my first part-time job in Manhattan after leaving academia. Then through another Smith College contact, I got someone at the 92nd Street Y in Manhattan, which is they were a major concert venue as a community organization, the Upper East Side. They had a great auditorium and a great music school, community music school, and professional concert series. And my friend from Smith, who used to be a soprano at the Metropolitan Opera, Judith Raskin, he came out to Long Island. I was conducting some opera performance, and she recommended me to the music program at the Y, and I got this part-time job in their music school conducting a small chorus, about 28 singers, but good people, a community orchestra, a reading orchestra every weekend. And I did some operas there. It was called Jewish Opera at the Y, where we produced an 8-year period. We produced one new work commissioned every year. And this was a big deal. These things were reviewed in the New York Times. So I got my in the door city with these 2 part-time jobs that I managed to get through personal musical connections that I had networked and cultivated, but it was all, it seemed so natural. And this was just because there were some women beginning to be making these hiring decisions. They saw me as a good candidate. It would never have happened early, let's put it that way. So I was fortunate about that. And then once I was in New York, I just kept adding more work to this, a basic living, bare bones. But I was able to survive with these part-time jobs. And I was there for 18 years. And at the time I got into my 40s, I had about 5 different jobs: manage music, conduct the chorus, and teaching conducting, choral conducting, and also coaching singers in oratorio repertoire. I started teaching at Manhattan School of Music, also another wonderful music school, conservatory. And that was music. I was doing opera stuff there. And then I got hired to do this work for the Metropolitan Opera Guild, which was fantastic. Some other small opera companies. I would get phone calls preparing choruses by putting together singers that I knew. And Peter Schickele, PDQ Bach, the big thing, he had these annual concerts at Carnegie Hall that of Baroque music, hysterically funny. Iphigenia in Brooklyn, the cantata, and Haydn's The Seasonings, and all kinds of silly things. So we were the volunteers that participated in that. I was music director of the Dessau choirs for 12 years, and that's how I major works at Alice Tully Hall, teaming up with the new American premiere of Handel's Saul at Lincoln Center in Alice Tully Hall. And then the New York Philharmonic would occasionally call, can you get us 100 violin for Liszt's Faust Symphony? And I would say, sure, and put down the phone, and God, how am I going to people always wanted to do it. So we did that. I did half a dozen things for the New York Philharmonic, most festival. And by that time, I was having a wonderful time. I was getting into my late 40s and realizing, oh, I'm paying for my own health insurance. Oh, I don't have a going to manage in the next 20 years. So I read and realized there is nothing in New York answer that I can do that will really be secure, dependable, and pay benefits. I have to leave New York. And I started, I knew I had a 5-year unit. I got too old to be easily hireable. And I applied for everything that sounded interesting, based where I might enjoy living. And I always end up 1 out of 3 finalists, things like Chicago Symphony Chorus, Eastman School of Music, and other such things. And I never got those jobs, but I was always 1 of 3. And then finally, after 3 years of this kind of searching about, one of which was the St. Louis Symphony Chorus job, was an offer as a full professor of music with tenure and director of choral music at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. That would have meant going back to academia. And believe me, I was nervous about that because I burned at Stone. And so, and I fell in love with the St. Symphony and Powell Hall and the whole atmosphere. I loved working with professionals. They had a great choral. So I chose that job, and that was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because I was able to move here at age 50, not knowing anyone, and have the opportunities to work with Leonard Slatkin, Hans Funk, David Robertson, Deneuve, to do repertoire I wasn't able to do in New York. All this adventurous choral music by John Adams that we did with, and other things, major had not done, Beethoven Missa Solemnis, for instance. So it's been an amazing musical adventure. At the time, it's been a full-time job. It's one of only maybe half a dozen in the country where an orchestra has its own chorus and pays a chorus director, full-time staff salary to this job. So I feel so extraordinarily fortunate to have this opportunity. And then in the meantime, of course, as a New Yorker, I never thought I would live 27 years in St. Louis, but I've become totally in love with the lifestyle here and the community. And of course, when I retire, I'm going to be enjoying concerts here and continuing, I hope, to be part of the extraordinary music community and the extraordinary arts community that we have in St. Louis. So the surprise at the end of 50 years of doing all of this, it always was the music for me. I loved choral music because it's making music with people. And I always wanted to do more great music. Always my goal was to do it at a higher level, better. I've actually stuck with that for 50 years. But the surprise now at the end of it all is that the people are almost more important than the music. has gotten me through everything, all the difficulties of whatever happened, whatever seating people that are greatly missed. So you're given a hard time for a number of years. But the music making has always kept me through, but ultimately that it more even than the music. The combination in choral really is a very, very, so I know why more and more people don't want to be choral conductors, because it's such a great thing. So as I think of, I would never have imagined as a student in high school that I would never have imagined that I would have had so much joy in it over a 50-year period. And that it would have worked out so well in every possible way. So in terms of advice to young women starting out now, if there's anything that you want to do, like can do, that's not music, because it's music is still a very, very difficult profession for anybody in any way. But do what you love most of all. Be prepared for opportunities. And you don't know where those opportunities are going to come from. Take a look at the future and be ready to adapt to the surprises of changing time, pandemics, what comes our way. And there will always be those surprises, and mostly be wonderful. So in little memoirs, there have been questions, comments from anybody that you'd like to share.
I was going to say you can
There
come up.
she is.
Yeah. Hold on a minute. We have a question for you. And sorry, our
Okay.
internet here at school has been really choppy. So
Yes, it happens, you know. Hi, I'm just wondering, Amy, your experience at SUNY in New York.
Yeah.
Do you believe that might have been related to you being a female?
Oh, of course.
Oh, okay.
I mean, but you see, reporters were all men, and it's quantify it. You know, remember this was 1974. There were no women, very, very few women in positions of leadership in these places. But I was also very young, so. Would I handle it differently now? Of course I would. So it's a combination of things. It's not just being a woman, obviously. And I also had plenty of people who were supportive of me, and they were men and women. But there's no question. One of the things that was a problem at SUNY was my jealous colleague, the orchestra conductor at the time, and I had started conducting a local opera company, and he really wanted to do that, and it was very much in his interest that I leave. And sure enough, when I did take over that opera company, so that's a case of there I was not just a woman, but a role. And this was not a problem that came from the students. This was from a fellow faculty member. You know, it was university politics, academic politics. So, you know, many reasons why I didn't get tenure. But you know what? it doesn't matter because it was just an incredible gift. I think if I hadn't here, I would probably still be there. You know, not that that's a bad thing, because it's not a nice place, you know. Anyway. Sexism, always, always, when, especially in, I was to do opera things. Music, women always have been more accepted until you start into a higher profile level. Then you get smashed down quite gratuitously, I think. But when I started, I had quite a lot of experience as an opera, even young, and I had coached opera with George Schick, who was an assistant conductor at the Metro. And my La Boheme score to him, and I played it and sang all the parts and conducted it. And he showed me exactly all of conducting Puccini. So there I was doing Tosca and La Boheme with this little opera company. Okay. And I got this review of Tosca. Now, was it a great performance? No, the soprano made a lot of mistakes. It was in a high school auditorium, but it was actually quite well put together, if I say so myself. So I got this damning review where they printed a big picture of me, caption that I won't repeat because it was just so outrageously dismissive. And people I invited from New York knew that I had done a really good job. So that's the sexism that would happen if you overstep your position. In other words, if you tried to get out an academic situation or out of a choral situation. In New York, there were these small opera companies, and when interviewed with quite a nice resume already and recommendations from people like and so on, I was told by the chairman of the board, "Oh, we're not hiring." Said inserts. And when I applied for a job as a chorus director of a chorus in New Jersey, an adult volunteer chorus, no different from the one I was conducting in New York, the chairman of the board, who was in graphic, who would be threatened by the situation, said, "Oh, we're not ready for a woman conductor." And in 1980 something, 88, something like that. So people were very open about this. There's no question. Anyway, lots of other stories of that. At the same time, there were people who believed in me and helped me and recommended me and so on. So perseverance is essential. Absolutely essential, and confidence. And I got that confidence from my mentor in college. And that's why a women's college is a wonderful thing and was for me. So a place like Narings for women can be an amazing source of that kind of confidence, even now in a world where men do have the upper. I mean, Natalie Stutzman was hired, and by the way, she's French, she's not even American, by the Symphony. Now in 2021, Marin Alsop retired from Baltimore. There were the entire United States of America with professional orchestra, and none of the top tier orchestras had a woman at film in 2021. Now then, they hired Natalie Stutzman, who's in her 50s. Great. So in the orchestral world, I think it's still safe to say, and on this, I don't know someone, but if an orchestra conductor, the best thing is to be a non-American man from anywhere else, from Italy, from Venezuela, from China, from Finland, from anywhere else but America. The next best thing is to be an American man. And then all other others, women, people, and so on. So that's my view of and it doesn't take long to see that the New York Philharmonic's music director has been Dutch, then St. Louis Symphony, he's French, Chicago, he's Italian, Pittsburgh, I believe he's German, Philadelphia, he's Canadian, and French Canadian, get the idea. So any other questions? Empowerment from women's school has played a very my life. No question.
Mackenzie, did you have any questions that you wanted to ask? I thought it was fascinating to hear this, and when you just shared how many who was in these positions of leading orchestras and conducting, it really is.
And there's
eye-opening.
more.
And there's a
Yeah.
lot more.
Well,
Yes.
Seattle.
Mhm.
Ludovic Morlot, no, it's Thomas Dausgaard. I believe he's Austrian or Dutch, okay, but he's not American. And his predecessor was Ludovic Morlot, Gustavo Dudamel. Now, Mike Tilson Thomas in San Francisco, of course, was the exception, as of course in St. Louis for many years were Leonard Slatkin and David Robertson. So, but these are outliers. They're exceptions. So that's the reality.
Mhm. I guess the best thing too, advice wise, is just like you said, persistence. And for women going into the field today, to find a good mentor is what I've taken away from what you've shared, and just keep trying.
Absolutely. And mentors are everything. And I happen to know some of the women now have become very successful as conductors, are brilliant people like Natalie Stutzman, Karina Campos, who has conducted here and was supposed to do something with Horace at St. Louis Symphony, but that got, so I was disappointed to get to work with her. But these are stars, and Karina Kanalakis and Natalie both were mentored by Simon Rattle. He observed, he became aware they were doing. He helped them get management. He helped them make connections. He gave them encouragement. And how can that anyone function without that? It doesn't happen just by talent or hard work alone. Talent, work, opportunity, and the opportunity is created by connections with people, preparedness, and just the economics of the world. I mean, if the orchestra can't afford a chorus, they have a chorus director, So they have to support them also.
Well, thank you. And then, does
Yeah.
anyone else have another question, or Mackenzie, did you want to come on up?
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
go ahead and close up.
We really appreciate it. And it's
Yeah,
very,
thank
it was
you so
very
much.
interesting, very enlightening.
Yeah, so thank
Thank
you so
you.
much
I'm
for
glad.
coming. So I'm gonna go ahead and swivel this around. Okay, so thank you so much for coming, Ms. Kaiser. I really appreciate it. And it was I loved the talk and it was very like enlightening. I also wanted to thank everyone in this room. You guys have given me so much support and I thank you guys so much for helping me, make this dream happen. And then, hopefully like late, you'll be seeing, we're not gonna be done yet. It's just it might be changing a little bit more in the coming days, but thank you all for your support. I really appreciate it. It's meant a lot to me. So thank you again so much. You know, for those recorded watching, please fill out the survey if you can. And again, just please, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Bye. To be here. Thank you.
yeah, thank you so much.
Well, thank you again.
Yes, and have a great night as well.
I think she left.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay, I didn't mean for that to happen. That's okay.